Hello, Johnny Concert here, and welcome to my podcast. I like to talk about music. I call myself Johnny Concert because I've been going to shows for over 40 years, and I've seen over 4,000 concerts. And I continue to see them on a regular basis to continue my studies and bring you guys the most up-to-date information. And so I think I'm entitled to speak about the subject because I put in the time. I used to, first 1,000 shows, I sat up in the balcony. And then next 1,000, I was kind of down lower. And then everybody that would know me from every show, because I go to every dang concert, all the security and all the people, all the bartenders and everybody there would say, dude, you're supposed to be up front. You know everything about this band, and you love this band, and you've seen them 20 times, so you need to be up front. So then the third 1,000, I was up front, and then the last 1,000, I don't really have to pay anymore very often. So that's some of the perks, putting your time in. But, basically, I'd like to say there's two kinds of music out there. Basically, let's start at the beginning, two kinds of music. There's the music I like and the music that sucks. Those are the two kinds. That's it. And people are always like, well, it's just a matter of opinion. It's your opinion, whatever. I'm like, yeah, but my opinion is better than your opinion. And people always say, oh, it's subjective. Whatever. You can't compare these two genres, whatever. You compare anything you want, anytime you want. And I do. And and since I've been to 4,000 shows, I think I have a little latitude, to speak. And so that's where I'm coming from. Now, there's also, I like to say that Rush is my favorite band of all time. Pink Floyd is the most amazing band of all time. But Led Zeppelin is the best band of all time. And that's just, there's really no dispute. And I don't really care what anybody else thinks about it. That's just how it is. No, I think a lot of people would agree with me. Led Zeppelin, they're just impossible to beat. I mean, they're just incredible. I was talking with my producer, Dave, we just watched Song Remains the Same the other day, and it still holds up. Still fantastic. And I actually got an argument about somebody when it was released. It was recorded in 73, released in 76. So he was like, oh, they did it in 76. I'm like, they didn't do it in 76. They put it out in 76. So I won that one again, too. So then I always like to say, too, because metals, I love all kinds of music. I say that whenever I'm talking to somebody, I say, what kind of music you like? And guess what everybody says? Everything. I'm like, come on. So now what I say is, what kind of music you like? And don't say everything. Because everybody just says everything. That's a cop-out answer. It's music, man. It's important. You got to have an opinion. And if you don't have, you got to have a strong opinion, in fact. That's just how it is. Music's important. It's not only important, it's critical. It's the lifeblood. It's one of the only things that's real anymore, even though it could be faked a little bit. But live music is one of the few things that's real anymore. Good sex and live music. Anything else is fake. And so we got to hold on to it. Metals, when I'm asked that question, heavy metal is my favorite of all time. And so I say that Black Sabbath invented heavy metal. Some people argue with you a little bit, but they're wrong, and I'm right. Black Sabbath invented heavy metal with the song Black Sabbath on the album Black Sabbath by the band Black Sabbath. And that's a trivia question, too. Name something like at least five bands where the name of the band is the name of the first album, and there's also a song of that name with that name also. You got your, leave a comment if you know some of them. Black Sabbath being one of them, for sure. So, but the holy triumvirate of metal is Sabbath, Priest, and Maiden. And nobody could ever touch those guys. They're all still touring. Well, Black Sabbath's only doing one more final gig. But, pretty much for their since the 60s, they've been touring, and they still, Maiden a little later, 10 years later probably. But that's the holy triumvirate of heavy metal, and Black Sabbath they invented heavy metal. And that's just how it is. So God bless them. I got my Ozzy shirt on. And they're doing one more tour with only one date on the tour. That's Birmingham, where they grew up. And that's a part of the story of how they invented heavy metal is in Birmingham, it's like a concrete jungle. There's row houses, pubs, and there's a factory. And it's just a matter of time when you're growing up, you're going to work at the factory back in the 60s and 70s and before that. And so Ozzy and the Black Sabbath guys were working in the factory. They finally got a record contract. And their last day on the job, Tony Iommi brought the machine down and cut the 3 tips of his fingers on his fretting hand. He's left-handed, so he'd be like this. 3 fingers of his fretting hand off. And it was like, dude, we just got the contract. You're put on an album. We're going on tour, and you cut your fingers off. So he had to invent these. It hurt to play guitar after that. I mean, they healed, but it hurt when he would fret the strings and bend them. And so he invented these little. They were almost like little condoms, kind of, with pads on them, and they were like little rubber things around over his fingers, so it didn't hurt as much to play. But then what he did was to lessen the pain even more. He loosened the strings a little bit. And kind of invented the drop D tuning, the lower tuning, which made that ominous guitar sound, which invented heavy metal on the song Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath. And so that song is 3 notes. Down, down, down. 3 notes invented heavy metal. And so that's on the first album. It was released in 1970. The album was actually finished in 69, but it was Friday the 13th, on February 13th, 1970. And the record company wanted to have the ominous, the Black Sabbath mystique. So they held the album for a couple months and released it on February 7th, Friday, February 13th, 1970. And so the story behind that song is, most people just imagine that Ozzy wrote the lyrics because he sings them so, he owns them and he sings them so well. But Geezer Butler actually used to write the lyrics on those early Sabbath albums. And he didn't like it either. He didn't like writing the lyrics. He loved it when Ronnie James Dio joined the band. And he's like, finally I don't have to write the dang lyrics anymore. So, but he wrote the song Black Sabbath, and what happened was he and Ozzy were fooling around with the Book of Black Magic and at Geezer's house. And Ozzy went home, and Geezer put the tome in his cupboard and got in bed, and in the middle of the night he woke up, and there was a figure in black pointing at him. And that's the song, Figure in Black, which points at me. And so he said he was just frozen in fear, and he couldn't move. And he said that he doesn't remember a period of time. And then the next morning he was up, and he checked the cupboard, and the Book of Black Magic was gone. And they've never figured it out. He and Ozzy will tell that story forever, and they've never figured out what happened. But that's what spawned that's the story behind the song Black Sabbath. And so that's just, but there's a million Black Sabbath stories. But that's interesting that when he cut the tips off his fingers, that's what created that sound. So, and then of course they had Ian Gillan came in on the. What happened was here's another good story. They signed a contract for the first 4 albums with Don Arden, Sherrod Osbourne's father. It's a quite incestuous story. So they signed the contract. But they started partying. They all lived in these mansions. They had Rolls Royces, and they started partying their ass off, as one does when there's one's in Black Sabbath, and people are throwing money at you and drugs at you in the 60s and 70s, and that's what you do. You start getting fucked up. So they did, but they got so fucked up that by Volume 4, the 4th album, they were just out of their heads. They couldn't get together. The sound wasn't right. They weren't meshing. They were just too fucked up. And so they said to the record company, fuck you guys. We're not putting out this 4th album. What do you think of that? And the record company, they didn't know what they were doing. All the bands back then, they were so excited to get a $5,000 advance or whatever it was, that they just signed anything. And so it turns out they didn't own the mansions, and they didn't own the Rolls Royces. So they said, you're not putting out that 4th album. Well, you got 30 days to vacate your house. Like, well, that's my house. What are you talking about? You don't own that house. Read Clause 17 of the contract. You don't own that house. And so they ended up putting out Volume 4, but then it got increasingly. I still think those albums are absolutely fantastic. Sabotage and even Never Say Die, I think, is excellent, even though it had a little disco to it with the horns and such. But increasingly, Ozzy became way more erratic. He was partying harder than everybody. They say that he took acid every day for 3 years at one point, and he was just out of his skull. And so it came down to, believe it was. Was it Technical Ecstasy or Never Say Die, where they couldn't find him, and they had the album written, and even the lyrics were written. All Ozzy had to do was come into the vocal booth, sing the lyrics, and the album was done. They couldn't find him. It took them 30 days. They were looking for him. They can't find him. And so after he did that album, they fired him. And that's when Ian Gillan came in for one album, Born Again album, which was, I still think it's pretty good, but it's, they don't think it's anywhere near one of their best. And Ian Gillan always says he's the worst singer Black Sabbath's ever had. Jokes about it. And then, then after that, of course, the great Ronnie James Dio left Rainbow. So Ronnie James Dio, when Richie Blackmore left Deep Purple in 1975, and then Tommy Bolin came in to Deep Purple, and they put out one album called Come Taste the Band, 1975. And then meanwhile, Richie Blackmore formed Richie Blackmore's Rainbow. And his ego, he's so hilarious. Richie Blackmore's with apostrophe S, Rainbow. It's his rainbow. It's not just Rainbow. It's his rainbow. He wanted to make that clear. But he recruited Ryan James Dio on the vocals, who had been in a band called Elf. But at the time, most people did not know who Ryan James Dio was. And so he started with Richie Blackmore's Rainbow. Then he did Rainbow Rising and Long Live Rock and Roll albums, which are just phenomenal albums. Who else they got? Cozy Powell on drums, Roger Glover on bass, and who else? We got Tony Kaye, I believe, on keyboards, and it's just, I mean, excellent lineups, and just those 3 albums are just phenomenal. But then, Dio wanted to take, he wanted to lead the songwriting, and Richie Blackmore wanted to lead the songwriting. So they started clashing, and that's when Black Sabbath needed a singer, and so that, it was just kismet, they call it, when all the forces align. So what happened was, when Dio started singing with Black Sabbath, a lot of people say, the purists, oh, Black Sabbath's not Sabbath without Ozzy. Well, yes, it is. And those Dio albums are absolutely phenomenal. Some of the best albums ever in the history of music. And there's not one weak link on those albums. Heaven and Hell, every single song is excellent. Mob Rules, every single song is excellent. And so those are just, 2 of my favorites of all time. And 2 of the best guitar solos ever. The last song of the Heaven and Hell is Lonely is the Word. Just the guitar solo, just amazing. Just magical. And the last song of Mob Rules called Over and Over. And again, just Tony Iommi just goes on a tangent and it's just, some of the best guitar playing you've ever heard in your life. And so that Black Sabbath, then they formed Heaven and Hell. Gosh, the story goes on and on. And they're just one of the best bands of all time. And they invented heavy metal, and Black Sabbath is Black Sabbath. So I wish I could go to Birmingham and see that final show. I think they got Iron Maiden, they got Pantera, they got Metallica, and everybody showed up to open up, because everyone acknowledges that if it weren't for Black Sabbath, they probably wouldn't exist. Everything spawned. Now, interestingly enough, Judas Priest was around at that same time, actually. And now Judas Priest's first album was not until '74, but they were putting out music. They were a band in late '60s, even 1970, something like that. So they were right there, but they didn't quite get it together until '74 to put out Rock-a-Rolla. And and then Judas Priest just announced another tour. Who are they playing with? It's a great opener. And then Iron Maiden just got off the road, and they're going to play again too. So they're not done either. So the longevity of these bands is absolutely phenomenal. And these guys are in their 60s, sometimes 70s, and they're still kicking everybody's ass. I see 50 to 80 concerts a year. And the old guys are still putting out the best music, the best shows, the most energy, the most the tightness. It's something to see, let me tell you. And what else cracks me up, too, is how negative people like to get sometimes. Oh, Rob Halford can't hit those notes anymore. Oh, yes, he can. I don't know what concert you were watching, but he can, at age 70, he can still hit the dang notes, which is absolutely, astounding. He's got a 4.5 octave range. And interestingly enough, Luciano Pavarotti, the famous opera singer, who many people would say is the best singer of all time, said that Rob Halford is the best singer of all time.
Johnny, Johnny, Johnny. Johnny, Johnny, Johnny. Johnny, Johnny, Johnny.